Well, today we have Chris Prefontaine. Now, Chris is the chairman, founder of the Smart Real Estate Coach. Now, again, you might think that this is more so from a sales perspective. It really isn't. It's more so from the perspective of deal structure. Now, Chris runs this organization where he brings people into it and ultimately does deals with them where it's either 100% seller financing, there is the lease to purchase option, and also the subject to version of this. Now, Chris gives us a really comprehensive understanding of what the three structures of those deals look like. But the other part about it that I think is really interesting is that a great deal of the success that he has had within his organization are agents that are out there doing real estate deals at the moment. And with the marketplace shifting, we speak about the opportunity that there is for agents to get involved within these different structures. I think the one thing that I take away from this is the lack of financial liquidity that you need to start doing deals and start being part of those deals that come across your desk as an agent. And this could be a really good transition of something as a new department within your business. We'll make sure that everything's linked below. But it was interesting to talk to Chris about the deal structured options that are there. Sort of put a little bit of a light bulb on for me, thinking, I knew about it, but again, I didn't really associate it with how realtors would do it or anything along those lines. Hopefully you enjoy. Welcome to Rethink Real Estate. My name is Ben Brady, and this is a real estate podcast aimed to deliver sales strategies, marketing tips, and business insights from industry experts and myself to build a listing-focused business for the future. Let's get into it. Chris, welcome to Rethink Real Estate.
Oh, thanks for having me, buddy.
So, Chris, you see a very broad perspective of the North American market, so we're going to jump straight in here. I just want to get your general feel of the sentiment out there at the moment, because if you were to take into, I can be, I can, because of the nature of part of our business, we get to see the market at its worst places, at its worst times, because we deal with listings that have been on the marketplace for quite a long time with our non-distressed auction model. And at the moment, I can have my head buried in that portion of the business, but then with our brokerage portion of the business, if you were to look at the Pacific Northwest and Southern California, still seems to be okay.
Yeah.
But if you were to go Florida, South Florida, Texas, Arizona, Tennessee, Colorado, it literally is probably worse from a transaction count than I would assume what 2008 was like 2009. What's the general feel?
Yeah, so it's interesting the way you have two different lenses, right, from your two different entities, because on my end, my lens will be a little different, but it's the same sentiment. My lens comes through, I used to be a broker, and we'll talk about it later, but my lens now comes through, I teach people creative real estate. So when that happens, what you just said, what I hear is sort of the opposite of the coin. Like in Southern Florida, I have several associates there, our students, and they can hand pick their deals the way we buy creatively, right? Because of what you said. And to the point where they're actually nervous to, overtake properties. So, meaning take too many properties. So the sentiment is mixed. I'm in about 80 markets right now, not me, but with our students, because we rev share with them. So I get a glimpse, right?
Yep.
And I agree that some are booming. I have two coaches in California and no problems there, right? So it is a mixed market. That's why I don't love when people ask me, and you did it great because you broke it down, but they'll ask, well, what's the market? Or what's the market? I don't know.
Yeah, I hate that question.
Markets. I don't know.
Yeah.
So I don't know if that was to your point, but it's very mixed but the media, in my opinion, helps people like us because we're doing creative real estate. So the media is screaming panic, and they're never right, but they're helping us help be the guide for sellers like agents are that know how to do it too.
Yeah. Well, so let's double click on creative real estate. Okay. Yeah. What does that ultimately mean? Because at the end of the day, it could mean a lot of things to a lot of people. People think about flipping as kind of creative, which technically, it really isn't. There's so many people that are doing it now from a flipping perspective, or that have been doing it, or think that it is their primary job, and all of those different things. Tell us what creative real estate means to you and your company.
Yeah, no, thank you, because it is different, and for me personally, it maybe helps some context how the whole thing spawned. Right, it was because I went to the 2008 crash. Got my head beat in financially, mentally, and every other way in deals, and said, okay, I have to get creative. I have no choice. I had no money. My credit was in the toilet. What am I going to do? So out of that, not that creative real estate's new. It's not, as you know, before banking. But for me, it was because I had been a broker for, 17 or 18 years. And I said, man, I got to change things. So for me, it was no signing on bank loans. So we don't take out bank loans and sign guarantees. Out of the question. No more kind of one payday deals, meaning for years I was a broker and I was a builder and, flipper, I did all that. That's great, but it's you do a deal and you get paid. So for me, the creative was, let's not do that again. So I trademarked a system. Maybe we'll talk about it with 3 paydays. All these things made up how I could only survive, and then became the business we exist by today and teach by all of North America. So creative for us means we buy owner financing, lease purchase, and subject to existing financing. Because with those 3, I can do what I said for my new rules were coming out of the crash. That makes sense?
Yeah. Can you take us through, let's go through the 3 of those and let's break them down, because I think that there's one of the things, the thing that I love about AI at the moment is the fact that, I believe that it's increased the level of intelligence for every single person from a baseline perspective, because, there's no doubt that if somebody's sitting here or like, it's funny, and again, this might be an ego thing, but one of the things that I've always found when speaking to the real estate community, that if you bring up certain subjects, they will tell you they understand when they really don't, and then they'll go away and they'll Google it later and then come up with their own interpretation of it. Yeah. Now you've got ChatGPT that cuts right down to the actual core of giving you the answer to it. So let's say that we needed to explain those 3 categories to our agents that are listening or the people that are on listening at the moment. What are those 3 categories?
Yeah, this is good too, because we niche down within those and everybody will say it differently or operate it differently legitimately. So let's go owner financing first, because that can mean a whole bunch of things. Owner financing for our community is we look for properties that are free and clear. It's about 1/3 of the properties in the United States, generally speaking.
Okay.
We want those because, unlike some of the other methods I'll explain, we can then structure the seller being the bank, that's thus the owner financing. We're going to make monthly payments to them in 9.9 times out of 10 if it's residential, because we can buy any asset that way. We're going to be making principal-only payments, no interest. Now, just think of that niche within the niche is very powerful because it's a major sort of recession hedge, because you're pounding down principal every month.
Right.
And depending on how you're exiting or holding it. So that's owner financing. We're just simply, the seller becomes the bank. We're making payments to them. Could be a 4-year, 5-year, 20-year, 10-year term. Doesn't matter. It just depends on their situation.
Now, just one thing on the seller financing stuff. You're looking for deals where owners own them 100%, or they have a small amount of debt left on it. Do you put any type of down payment on that property, or you're just simply just doing 100% owner financing? How does that normally look from a structure perspective?
Good question. Most residential, no down. So we're dealing with sellers that usually go, hey, I don't need a down, but I do want the best price or even a premium, and I'll give you time to do it. That's right. Usually who we deal with. When I bought my commercial building to put my companies in, he was the largest landowner in the area, and he's like, nah, that doesn't work. So we did a little down, but it was okay. It was my company's going in, so I justified
it. Fair enough. Yep. So the second category?
Let's go lease purchase. Very easy for a new person. All lease purchase is, unlike the owner financing, I'm not taking title. I'm just controlling the property by way of a lease purchase vehicle agreement. Once I do that, I cloud title, so they can't get amnesia and sell it to Uncle Johnny, right? So I file a notice of option, or depending on your state, a memorandum of real estate in California. And that way they can't sell it off. And now I go out and exit the way I exit, but I have the control of that property for whatever term I agreed on, 3 to 9 years again.
Right. So is that sort of one way, so you acquire it from a lease to purchase perspective, but the goal is to exit within a certain period of time at a higher price than what ultimately the lease to purchase price was?
Yeah, we exit a lot of ours for the sake of this show. Basic level is rent to own. We've perfected the rent to own. We actually help buyers get to the finish line. And those are usually going to be 3 years or less on the lease purchase one. Yeah.
Okay. And then the subject to, that's kind of got a little bit more hype around, like the others have always existed, so to speak, but I don't believe they're as hyped at the moment, because certain people have been advertising, people like yourself, obviously, as well, the subject to kind of phenomenon that's been going on, that if you click one video on YouTube, then your feed is filled with it forever. So tell me how subject to works.
Subject to is nothing more than, now the avatar, by the way, is completely opposite of the free and clear. So we'll go there. But it's nothing more than I buy your house, and the deed is going to transfer to whatever entity that I'm using. But the loan is going to stay in your name. You're the guarantor still until such time I cash it out. Now, unlike the free and clear owner, who's more prone to do that? Someone that needs financial relief, like right away. Not always, but typically that's who we deal with. And yeah, it's gotten a lot of buzz. There's one company in particular, there's two, that have got some major exposure around this. It's not a bad thing. I just worry about people doing it incorrectly, because you've got to paper the deal properly or you're going to cause headaches.
Can you give an example of what you mean by some of the headaches that possibly could pop up?
Yeah, well, there's a due on sale clause on almost every loan you're going to take subject to. So if you don't paper it properly, according to the Garden St. Germain Act from 1982, which allows you to transfer property without triggering that, you may, I never have, but you could have a headache with that. Second is, when I say they do it incorrectly, some people don't pay with the bill like they're supposed to. Well, if you don't pay the bill, the bank's going to come knocking. I don't care whose name it's in, right? And sadly, some people abuse that, and it gives the industry a bad name. And you've got people that really, really need our help. Instead of going to foreclosure or instead of short selling, they can fix things like within 6 months instead of 7 years. So it has to be done right.
So it's interesting. That's one of the things with the subject too that I've always sort of not understood, and it hasn't been explained primarily probably because I haven't really looked into it as deeply as what I should, is that a due upon sale is ultimately the one thing that a lot of people get nervous about, that the bank could come knocking at any point and say, no, hey, hang on a second. Someone else is paying the mortgage or technically in ownership of this property. You need to give us all the money or whatever it looks like. And that's what a lot of owners that would be doing this, obviously they're financially a little bit strapped, but the reality is that they're probably a little more panicked around that side of it. But then you mentioned or quoted some type of act that was enabled that you can do this?
Yeah, the Garden St. Germain Act was like in 1982-ish. And again, I'm not an attorney, guys, just for the listeners, but what I do know is this. We didn't do it that way. Even when we first started doing it, we put it in our LLC. We put it into a trust that was named like your last name and your street address family trust. That gave it a little more anonymity. But over the years now, we've realized if you structure in a trust, which the seller is part of to protect them, and it complies with the Garden St. Germain Act, you're okay. And in fact, last year, this is big. Last year, Charles Castellone from Florida spoke at our event. He defended, he had it happen once to a client, and it was last year, and he defended it and won because he papered it properly. That's an important case, by the way, case law for all of us.
Yeah, sets precedents to be able to do it and put people's mind at ease. So let's talk about Smart Real Estate Coach. You know, like that's your business. You're a 4-time best-selling author. Let's talk about some of the things that you're doing within your company at the moment that's getting people sort of, built up to the perspective of being able to do this stuff, because a lot of people are probably listening that are like, this sounds really complicated and difficult. But the real difficulty, I'm assuming, really isn't the structuring of everything. It's more so the finding of the actual deals and the opportunities that is probably the largest part of all of this, or the mental tenacity that anyone needs is the ability to prospect. So let's talk about your business as a whole and what you're doing for people to join.
Yeah, and again, context of how and why this came about. When I went looking, when I was down and out, it's like 2011-ish after the crash, I kept looking and looking. Now it's even harder. I could not find something that would say, here's what you do, and I will stay with you and do it. I found a lot of people selling me stuff, and today it's 100 times worse on the internet. They all want to sell you the get rich quick tomorrow product. So I started doing deals. My wife said to me, well, why don't you help other people do it, but really help them do it? So organically, the coaching started. We still do deals like I explained every single week, but the coaching started organically with someone from the War College here locally saying, hey, I'm going back to civilian life. Can you help me? I heard about you. Well, that has morphed into, we've hit the Inc. 5000 now 3 times in a row as one of the fastest growing companies. Why? I feel one of the major things, we don't have time for all of them, is that we do get in the trenches and do deals with people. So if you're in our community and you're doing a deal, we are involved in that deal from a revenue sharing standpoint. Percentages vary, but it goes from anywhere from 1 to 10 years. We're together on that deal because you are going to have questions and you are going to have headaches and you are going to have challenges, and we're there with it. That's what's differentiated us literally from everyone right now. That's the big differentiator.
And then I guess that with the marketplace seeming like there is going to be a shift. And what I mean by shift, I don't mean that there's going to be a complete and utter wave of foreclosures. I'm not sure whether that'll be the case. Even though if you were to go into the condo marketplace in Miami at the moment, you'd rather your building fall over than try and sell a property. Yeah. But like there's certain sections of the market, However, that being said, is that if you were to go into the Austin market, I actually had a conversation yesterday with one of the agents that we've got an auction with in Austin at the moment. I was actually a little bit renewed, to be honest, that I I've found that a real estate agent can actually have a conversation with a seller about the market not being good. But then I remembered Austin's had negative growth for the last 3 years. So at the end of the day, they're probably a little more used to it than the remainder of the country. So what opportunities does that all open up for your business and for people at the moment, with the marketplace taking a shift of having inventory on the marketplace for a longer period of time? Average days on marketplace is increasing, but yet there doesn't seem like there's a great deal of financial struggle, I might say, yet. I'm not sure.
I like two things you brought up. One is what it does for us in creative is I always tell people this: look, you got everybody, all this stuff happening that you alluded to, and you got the media screaming. When you know how to structure deals creatively, like we do, you don't panic. In fact, you're excited because there's all kinds of gaps in the market where people now are panicking. They do need a guide. Like when COVID happened, for that split second before the market got good, we were taking probably a record amount of properties. Why? They were scared. They go, well, help me. When in fact, almost every deal, unless they're grossly behind in arrears, almost every deal can be structured as long as the term's correct. I think that's an important one for people to know. So if I was a broker owner again back in my day, I was doing 100 homes a year, but I didn't know this. And I could have, instead of letting go, 18 or 20% of my listings, or instead of not getting buyers qualified, I could have fit them into the creative side and really been the authority. That's the opportunity there for them. Second part of your question was a good one I want to address, and now I just dropped it. What was the second part?
The second part of the question is that obviously there is opportunity in the marketplace that is coming up, but I guess that how do people start with, how do they start, doing this to get an understanding of it in the beginning? Obviously, it's reaching out to you and getting an understanding of the way that things are structured. But if somebody has zero knowledge right now, how do they start?
I'm big on free because of all the noise on social media. So for your listeners, they can just get our free book. I'm going to actually send two. And it's not one of those free book offers where you got to put in $8 for shipping. That's not free. Like, we literally ship the physical books from here. Just go to wickedsmartbooks.com/rethink, and they'll get shipped out here within a week or two. And then you can go on to, if you go on to YouTube, you mentioned YouTube earlier, you go on and type in Smart Real Estate Coach. We have certain theme days, but on Sundays, it's called Deal Structure Sunday. There's probably 500 deals posted. It will open your eyes, especially as a broker, owner, or an agent, to say, okay, this is not a competition. This is a complementary, reciprocal relationship for anything that doesn't fit inside my box that I can now do. That's pretty cool.
That's awesome, Chris, because it's kind of like, do you know one of the most beneficial things that I've ever seen is that if someone explains something to me, I can probably get about 50% of the way there. But if you show me how it's been put into place and works from a case study perspective, give me the breakdown of what this situation was and how you did and what the curveballs were and blah, 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 blah. It's kind of this light bulb moment. It's like the Harvard business case studies that you can read and go through. They are just, I find them so intriguing versus somebody telling me about, the structure of how it is supposed to work. It's just so much more intriguing. And I guess that from your community side of things, obviously you guys give a lot away for free. We'll make sure there's a link to the free book in there as well. We'll make sure we link your YouTube page also for that information. But I guess that becoming part of your community, what does that look like? How do people do that? And obviously the benefit is the holding hand process, because in many of the cases you're going to be in the deal with them, or is it a case that you are in everyone's deal with them? Is it only on a select few? Is it not? How does it work?
Yeah, good question. So everybody runs at a different pace, right? Has bigger goals, has more or less time. So we have a couple of things. One is group coaching, called our apprentice program. It was an important ad about a year and a half ago because not everybody wants to go fast. Everybody wants to do a bunch of deals, and everybody, frankly, has the resources to go fast. So the apprentice program is group coaching only, but it's a lot of touches. If you want it, there's 4 or 5 touches a week, and then access to our Slack community where the Wicked Smart community all lives. Then that can be deal sharing or not. It's your choice. Then in the associate program, which is for the more, say, committed and serious people, there are 3 levels within that. So the percentages vary and the fees vary. But on those, we are in their deals, but not for life. One is 18 months, one's 24, and one's 36. And I still work with some of the higher level so that they can get their legs, get anywhere between 1 and 10 deals done, and then feel the confidence in skill set to go ahead and go off on their own, or stick around if they want, up to them.
Now, there's obviously the question that's running in the back of my mind at the moment is that how do you monetize this? Because I can understand doing these type of deals can be, something Something is a way, like something is a side hustle, so to speak, as what it begins with, that then can eventuate into something that is a full-time thing. A lot of people love the freedom of what real estate creates, because if you would actually fundamentally look at real estate from, the performing of, if you were to look at real estate as a performing asset class, the reality is it's probably 18 out of the top 20 performing asset classes over a 50-year period of time.
Yep.
The reality is that there's a problem with, I think that there's a fundamental problem with real estate from an investment perspective, because at the end of the day, that real estate is also trying to return to the earth at the same time. So the reality is you've got a certain sector of cost. Now, I'm in real estate and I'm saying that, but the reality that I see in what you're doing is that this is a side hustle that can eventuate into something that then becomes something full-time that gives people the freedom in order to do that. If I'm starting today and I've got, say, I don't know, $100,000 at my disposal from an investment perspective, how quickly can I get up to speed and do deals, or how quickly could I get to a point where I'm making maybe between $60,000 to $100,000 a year out of this? How do I monetize this, Chris?
Yeah.
What does that timeline look like?
I'll give you a few things there. So first of all, the skill set and the cash available is not necessarily what will dictate that, because if 10 people came to me and said, hey, I'm leaving corporate America, or hey, I'm tacking this onto my agent business, how quickly can I do it? I go, well, I got to know you first. Because now you get into, forget the skill sets for a second. I can teach anybody the deals. It's have you been an entrepreneur ever? If you're an agent, yes, you have. But if you're in corporate America, no, you haven't. So there's a different set of skill sets there. So that'll all matter. But let me give you the community averages, okay? We don't take, we take the anomalies and put them all in there. So we don't take the good only. Yep. Our average time to first deal, which we obsess over, is about 157 days right now. That takes the person that broke a record at 27 days, and it takes the person that had a life event and took 2 years. We've literally had that. So we put it all together. So it's a few months. Now, the deal size, because to your point, we've helped people since, about 10, 15 years now. We've helped people leave their JOB, and we didn't realize that was going to be such a big demand. Yeah. Our deals are pretty big. 3 paydays all per deal, total around 45 grand low to 350 grand. New record broke. So they're not small deals. And when I say 3 paydays, it means they get paid up front like they used to as an agent. Then they launch a cash flow stream on that deal, though, and then they have a payday 3 in the future. So that's a pretty cool mix of cash flow streams. It doesn't take much to leave a significant 6-figure job. So the short answer is time to one of those is 157 days on average if you're not going crazy aggressive. And the best way, like you said, case studies, most recent, Rick worked for the government 30 years, did his first 5 deals with me. They were all over 6 figures. So he left his job. I mean, he had 180 employees. He had no life, but he had good money. But that took him about 24 months to leave his JOB. And that's pretty standard, pretty predictable.
And also there would be a part of that as well, is that there's the part, like a government worker ultimately is somebody that has never hunted and gathered, so to speak. So there's obviously a skill set that needs to be learnt.
Oh, he was an engineer. He's an introvert. And so talk about all the things working against me, right, to get him there.
Yeah, exactly right. Well, Chris, this has been really insightful. I really enjoy what you've done online with everything that you've got. It was very easy for me to get a full understanding of what you do with inside, 10 minutes of actually looking into it when they said that you might be a good guest on the podcast. And I think that this gives people, I think for the agent community that's listening, if you're wondering how does this fit in, one, you need to understand this stuff from a deal perspective. You need to know people in this space that if you don't want to do it, you need to be able to offer your clients a solution. But second to that is that tacking it onto your real estate business is one of the things that I just believe is probably the easiest thing that you can probably do just from looking at this from a short period of time. But in closing remarks, Chris, I guess what does the rest of 2025 look like for you and your business?
We are literally, back to the last comment I made, obsessed over improving that number, because when we can improve that number, the time to first deal, why would anyone want to leave when they can get access to that quickly, right? So that's what we're obsessed. We go by trimesters, but right now that's what we're obsessed with to improve.
Awesome. Well, Chris, thank you so much for being part of Rethink Real Estate. So about 75% of our audience hasn't liked, followed, or subscribed to our podcast. It would mean the world to us, and it would help this podcast more than you know to expand our reach if you were to like, follow, or subscribe on any of the platforms that you're watching or listening on. Thanks again.